Smile. Take it easy. Don't scream. Relax. Say it simply. Keep your head down and swing low. Follow through. Am I coming up in 1 or 2? Good. Here, here. Here, here. Good morning. To the man in the street, the administration of justice in British Columbia must be getting curiouser and curiouser. At least in the tragic Benrot affair, one cabinet minister seems to have sense enough to realize that you cannot put an alcoholic judge back on the bench to sit in judgment on other people. Meanwhile, we're getting the double talk from Attorney General Gardner that can't interfere. Goodness gracious me, separation of the powers. We all know perfectly well that appointments to the provincial bench since time immemorial have been influenced strongly by political considerations and political direction, like it or lump it. And then we come to the Farris affair. Did you see what happened yesterday? The appeal was handed down in the widely reported Papa John rape case, 2 judges to 1, disallowing the appeal. Papa John must, on the face of it, serve his 3 years. But guess whose signature was on the judgment as one of those disallowing the appeal? Chief Justice John Farris, would you believe? 2 weeks ago today, the Chief Justice resigned, as he said in his letter to Waterline, regardless of the substance of the allegation. His usefulness had been so badly impaired by the allegation that he's involved in some bawdy house business in the West End that he had to get out, to go. And yet his signature, dated yesterday, was on the Papa John decision. Now, I am not a lawyer. I am not speaking as a lawyer. I'm speaking as an ordinary person who says, how can a judge who was given an instant leave of absence by the Minister of Justice 2 weeks ago today append his signature with any authority to a judgment handed down yesterday? Of course, they'll tell you that the matter was considered prior to the allegations which caused the Chief Justice to give something which is almost tantamount to a plea of guilty to something or other. But from the point of view of the ordinary person, that a judge who has been given an instant leave of resignation and has asked for an instant leave of absence and has asked for the leave of absence, you might say, until the end of the year, how can he take part in any formal court proceeding? It makes a mockery of the system. I can't influence judges of the Court of Appeal. Quite obvious, the Papa John case is going to have to be re-argued again. Who sits on high on these things and decides that the administration of justice is to be held up, not by the common man, but by the system itself, to ridicule and contempt? I cannot answer that question, but we must look still to Attorney General Gardner, perhaps forever in vain, or to the Federal Minister of Justice, Otto Lang, to come down with what Clark Davy advocated on this television station, the publisher of the Vancouver Sun, a full and complete report to the public at the earliest possible date of the Chief Justice's involvement in whatever, and failing that, a full and complete public inquiry. Enough of that. Now, Brian Coxford shocked us yesterday with his report about the Cowichan Indian band. Today he continues that report from Cowichan and Duncan on the 9 deaths and the many attempts of suicide by young Indians just on our very own doorsteps.
Jack, this is the cemetery just outside St. Anne's Church, just on the edge of the Cowichan Indian Band Reserve. There are several people buried here who have taken their own lives. There's been a rash of them among the Cowichan Band of late. This area has been used all too frequently. 6 suicides in just over a month, all of them involving young people. And it's even worse when you consider over and above those suicides, there's been numerous attempts that have failed.
Brian will give us a full report on this morning's program.
Funerals have become an all too frequent occurrence for members of BC's largest Indian band. A rash of suicides among the young people on the reserves of the Cowichan Indian band have torn apart families and left the entire band in a state of depression. There have been 9 suicides this year, 6 of them in just over a month. The latest victim buried in St. Anne's Cemetery. 3 are from the same family, and one of the victims is the chief's 16-year-old son.
Well, there's 6 successful suicides and probably just as many attempted suicides.
There's been 6 suicides in 1 month?
Right, in 1 month.
In 1 month. And just as many attempts?
Right.
Chief Alphonse, you're personally involved in that. It also involved a member of your family.
Yeah, right. Son. 16 years old.
It must have placed a fairly heavy burden on yourself and your family.
Yeah, that's been pretty tough. There's something missing in our community to allow these young people to take their lives the way they did. There's no base, no moral base for them to fall back on. No spiritualism to pull them through, to guide them through to life in general.
Probably too much time on their hands, I'd say, is one of the factors again, just nothing to do, unemployment, booze, maybe, could it be the housing situations and where they live?
Homes on the reserve are run down. In some cases, as many as 3 families are crowded together under one roof. Not a good atmosphere for any young person to grow up in. And with the unemployment, the idle time and drink, it's an even less desirable environment. Recreational facilities are reserved for the very small. For the teenagers and young adults, there's a general lack of money for facilities. The Cowichan Indian Band administers somewhere in the neighborhood of about $1.4 million in funds each year. And out of that comes money paid for social assistance and also for housing. The social assistance amount is well over 3/4 of that fund. The rest, about $250,000, goes into housing, new housing, upkeep of streets, sewers, etc. It's not a large amount of money. There's well over 100 applications in the Cowichan Band for new housing, but there's no money to build it. So it means that people have been forced off the reserve into the white man's society, into a society that they haven't been able to cope with. It's particularly affecting the younger people.
All you young people are just like a garden of flowers to us elders. You're pretty flowers. We don't want you to wilt. We don't want you to break. Please put it in your heart, your mind. What has taken place today, we don't want it to happen anymore.
Community and family means something to them different from what it means to the non-Indian people. That's their security, their way of life, and we're forcing them away from that. But there's nothing to go to, because a lot of these people are unemployed. They're unemployable. We don't seem to have the proper funds to educate them, to make them employable. so that they can become more self-sufficient. And another aspect of that is that in this particular band, a good portion of the non-Indian community in Duncan is located on reserve land, so that the two communities are really intermeshed, and that just exacerbates the conflict between the Indian and non-Indian community. And I think the non-Indian community are not very understanding about the Indian way of life and the Indian problems. They only look at it superficially.
Have courage. Don't think, oh, they don't want me. That's why they're talking like this. No. We want you to come up and be respectable people in times to come. That's what we want you to be, my dear one.
How many of the 6 people who committed suicide recently were forced to live off the reserve?
Half of the people were living off reserve.
After every funeral, there's a wake of sorts, traditional among Indian people. They share. A funeral is a community expense, and because there's so much concern about the suicides, it's a time for thoughtful words from the elders.
You see a dying tree, the first thing you got to check is the roots. That's where you find the problem, and when we find the problem, then we'll discuss it among the people and counsel the younger people, because young people today, they get depressed very easily because they're not strong, because of the different cultures of the Indian and the white man, and they can't cope with the white man's society as a whole.
I just don't know what to think of it. Sometimes I blame ourselves, the older people. The older people, a long time ago, my grandfather, would be finishing off a table when they were eating. He'd get up. Lecture, all of us. Even when I was a married man already, I used to get lectured, telling me what to do, how to behave, how to be a man in society, how to respect all people, never double your fist to any person, and all that, to be a respectable person.
Getting kind of hard on young people, and
They're not listening to their parents.
yes, and especially the younger age, about 8 or 7, they're running around town like that.
So it's got to start right with the very young, eh?
Yes, about 8 or 9, because they're walking around late at nights.
I think the parents of the children that are doing that are not living right. Some of them, we get carried away on booze. The children are neglected more, too much for the children.
6 suicides in just over a month, 4 by hanging, 2 with guns. There's a sense of hopelessness and lost pride among young members of the Cowichan band. And as the latest victim was buried Thursday morning, band leaders were informed of 3 more attempts at suicide in the last couple of days. They wonder when it will end. Are those double?
Oh, yeah. telephone numbers as I begin to speak. I'll go straight to camera. Yes, yes.
Discounted both by the police and the family.
Oh, sure. Looks very smart. I went to, what do you call this, gentleman to somewhere to run with him, so I remember else from the matter.
30 seconds coming back now.
What's the big man suit, you know, the looks right. I'm going to have a chat with my colleague Brian Coxford, but I want to say first of all that I would invite telephone calls on this particular segment, on this particular topic, but I'd like to get them, if possible, from Indians on reserves anywhere in British Columbia who are watching the program with specific knowledge or opinions about the suicides on the Indian reserve. Brian, that was a shocker when we learned of that story a couple of years ago. We didn't believe it, did we? A couple of days ago. We didn't believe it, did we?
You know, it's not like, almost an astronomical increase in terms of what we consider the norm over a period of a year, which would be 1 to 2 or 2 to 3 suicides on a reserve, which is too many to start with.
How many were there this year in the Cowichan band people? Some off reserve and some on.
9 so far, and the 6 that we talk about just in the recent.
Now, how many of them were men and many were women?
One of the 6 we're talking about, there was 1 woman and 5 men.
Youngest was
16.
And the oldest was
32.
32. Why so many men? What about the attempts? Are they made by women who don't make it, fortunately, perhaps?
We're told that in terms of the men, if they're going to attempt suicide or commit suicide, it's by more violent means. Hanging, they take a gun. The women perhaps would seek drugs, and by the time they're into a state of unconsciousness, they're perhaps safe.
Listen, the elders impressed me. The elders all seem to feel that they've lost the old roots, they've lost the old culture, they've lost the old family discipline. The elders don't matter to the youngsters anymore. Any mutterings among the youngsters themselves, or are they just accepting themselves as cast-offs from unsuccessful cast-offs from the white man's material society?
No, I detected that there was a considerable concern, at least among the responsible young people, that, first of all, reflection on their community that, hey, why is this happening? Perhaps an embarrassment. And also genuine concern that, as to why it's happening.
That housing, we drive through Indian reserves, we never stop and look ourselves, The housing looks quite abominable.
That's new housing we saw in Santa. That's a new subdivision on the Cowichan Reserve. They've tried something different there. They've sold lots. The Indians have bought lots from the band, and it's kind of like a residential area.
They get federal assistance on it.
Yeah,
but the place isn't probably finished or kept up, is it?
No, there's only $250,000 in funds to look after sewers and roads and everything else over.
And don't they build the houses themselves from materials? Some of them.
Some of them, yeah.
Materials supplied, but there's no proper maintenance or support because they don't have enough money to do it.
Yeah, that's right. And 3 families in some cases in one home.
You say 3 of them were off, or 2 or 3 were off the reserve when they committed suicide recently. I mean, living off the reserve.
Of the 6 we talk about, 3 were off the reserve, living in apartments.
How about alcohol? Heavy.
Big problem.
Big problem.
Depression, unemployment, 85%. They turn to drink, and of course, all your problems come out.
What could you do? What could be done? Is it just spending money, or is it something much deeper than that? I mean, they're going to send in psychiatrists, and they've got psychological, what do they call it, profile, and they're going to have sensitivity units. Yesterday, for instance, we were told that 3 young students committed suicide in Nyanch in one very short period last year. We didn't even hear about it down here, did we?
That's among the Nishkis.
That's right. If it was 3 in West Vancouver, it'd be headlines at once. The 3 young kids in West Vancouver committed suicide. They'd have headlines right away. Not easy to get answered. Any calls, Linda? 1303. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Mr. Webster.
Are you on the topic?
Yes, I am, sir.
Are you an Indian?
I'm a white man, but I'm a member of the Cowichan Indian tribe of the Stony Creek Indian Reserve.
Go on.
And I would just like to let you know that on July the 8th to August the 7th, can you hear me?
Yes.
That they had 3 suicides on the Stony Creek Indian Reserve up here. And now, how I become a member of the Cowichan Indian tribe is that through the Indian...
Just a minute. Where is Stony Creek? Near Merritt? Where is the Stony Creek Indian Reserve?
That's right.
Where is it?
It's out of Vanderhoof.
What's out of that? 3. Were they old people or young people?
They were young people.
What ages were they?
One was 17. He shot himself with a rifle. And the other one was about 16. And the other fellow was about 23.
All boys, all men. Were they all men?
All men, yeah.
What has been done up there to try and defuse this situation?
Well, as you know, the situation on reserves around the area are quite a few problems on them related to alcohol and unemployment. And
tell me
find
this.
That...
Just a minute. I don't need to go over that again, but tell me this. Was there any big furor about it? Were there any public inquests? Was public concern expressed at all?
Well, this is one thing here that I'm kind of upset about. That they never had an inquest in the last 2 years. They haven't had inquest into any deaths on any of the reserves in this area.
Okay, now just hold on a second.
Why sometimes?
Don't go away. Hold on. No inquests either over at Cowichan.
No.
Just a coroner's inquiry.
Yeah.
Which is not unusual, you see. For 1 or 2 suicides, not unusual.
Well, when you get a batch like this.
Well, with a batch like this, maybe there should be a combined inquest to create some public interest in the problem. Next call, Linda. Hold that fellow on. I want to talk to him during the break. Go ahead, please.
Yes, my name is Kibo. I am Mohawk Indian.
Yes.
And I am from Belleville, and we've had that problem up here, but not suicides. We've had like a drinking problem up here because like jobs are out.
Yeah.
Like the reserves just not want to try to find jobs and that because they are more into alcohol and they are so lazy.
Well, what do you think of if you were an Indian in British Columbia, would you be shocked by the stories we did yesterday and today?
Yes, I am. I'm shocked. I'm really shocked because I think there is no it does not prove nothing and it does not get you nowhere. And I think people can try. People that they can try.
Well, we're at least putting the spotlight on it. Thanks for your call. Go ahead, please.
Jack?
Yes.
Back in the late Depression, one of the greatest things you could ever buy, if you had the money, and perhaps had to go to the island, was to buy a Cowichan Indian sweater. And today, you still see them on the market. But what has happened to the Indians used to make them themselves? I noticed in that picture you just had that even the elders were wearing store-made sweaters.
Well,
they make that into an industry.
Just a minute. Don't they still make Cowichan sweaters? One of the problems I know is the supply of wool, but it's not. Much of it is machine-made now on a factory basis. I know there's a store right on the highway near Duncan, which I believe sells Cowichan Indian sweaters. I don't know what that adds to the discussion, do you?
Just a lost art. That's one of the things the elders are talking about. Let's get back to the basics. It may sound very simplistic, but beads and some of the old-time things.
They talk about going back to beads and carving and sweaters and whatnot.
Everything.
I mean, if a white man says, go make beads and whatnot, I feel it's terribly patronizing, don't you?
In its cruelest sense, Jack, one of the elders mentioned yesterday, the cost of funerals. They've had numerous funerals, old age people dying, and also the suicides. You're looking at about $2,100 per funeral, shared by the people on the reserve.
You mean they're getting taken for $2,100 for a funeral?
Yeah, the nice casket, the whole bit. They used to make their caskets.
And they're paying $2,100 for a funeral today?
Right.
You mean to say
yesterday's funeral, when they made the collections, they were $1,100 short.
Damnable. Why should anybody be taken for that $2,100 for a funeral? Mind you, somebody's got to go and say, look, you don't have to pay $2,100 for a funeral. The white man went through that misery for years, and we've got part of it conquered through this and that and the next thing. The $1,100 shot for a funeral.
yesterday's one.
That shot you had of these people, they're all handing in the little bits of money.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Some of them, maybe could only afford a quarter, 50 cents, $1, but they all contribute.
Next call. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jeff.
Morning, ma'am.
Have you inquired into any other reserves other than the Cowichan?
Yes, I've spoken about Cowichan, and I know that the suicide rate in British Columbia among Indians is 40 per 100,000 of population, whereas among the non-Indian population it is 17 to 18. So its suicide rate is 2.5 times that of the white non-Indian population. 2.5 times. I had the Federal Medical Director of Health Services on the program by telephone yesterday morning. They are sending in sensitization crews and whatnot.
Is there any way that the BBC, whatever, the TV network could go through all of Canada, through the reserve, and...
Now, that's a pointless way to attempt to tackle it. It must be tackled by the Indians and by the people whom we employ to do it with publicity on the black spots, such as we have been doing in this case. Well, we'll keep on it, and we invite specific information from around the network. Specific information involving the suicides of young people and what the Indian bands think could and should be done about it. But people like myself, having dealt with Indian affairs for many years, don't have a hell of a lot of faith in me. Brian, thank you very much for a most excellent but most depressing report. We may come back to this on telephone calls later. Thanks, Brian. Now we'll take a break, and next I'm going to talk to Dr. Ken Varnam, Chairman of the Drug Committee of BC Medical Association. I occasionally try to make Friday a more light-hearted day. You can hardly say that about this morning's program, especially when I tell you that I'm going to turn to Dr. Ken Varnam, who is chairman of the which committee?
Drug Dependency Committee.
Of the BC Medical Association.
Right.
I must admit, Dr. Varnam, you and the Medical Association have had me thoroughly confused. And you would say that I was entitled so to be, wouldn't you?
Well, that's fair enough. We've had a little disagreement within the association itself.
Just a minute. The BC Medical Association came out and endorsed the heroin treatment plan. Then you came out and blew it apart. Then you had a meeting last week, and suddenly all is sweetness and light again.
Not all sweetness and light. I have to take 3 positions in this program. One, there's the official BCMA position. Secondly, there's the Drug Dependency Committee's position. And third, there's a personal position.
So you, instead of the normal politician's 2 heads, you've got 3 heads.
Well, I tend to fit in one of them, but in a moderate position.
I understand. You are one of the doctors who strongly objects to the compulsory aspects of the heroin treatment plan.
Correct.
That we've got clear. But you can understand my confusion over the situation.
Sure.
So what is the position now of the BC Medical Association?
BC Medical Association endorses in principle the direction and treatment.
Endorses in principle?
Yeah.
And will work wholeheartedly with the scheme?
The situation officially, as far as the BCMA is concerned, is that they will support any doctor who wishes to work with the scheme.
Are you telling me, therefore, that the BC Medical Association is not really putting itself behind the heroin treatment plan?
Officially, they are.
But unofficially, they're not.
Well, let's say that there are splits within the profession about what should be done.
But let me give you a comparison. And I'm not immodest about this. I have been close to the drug trade for 31 years. Not on the retail or wholesale end, but on the human tragedy end in British Columbia. And 90 or so, in my view, largely irresponsible lawyers, some of them not, have managed to give the impression to the whole of BC that this act is a damnable thing, and that the other 3,500 lawyers go along with their fears. I know that's not true about the legal profession. The average lawyer who has dealt with drug addicts thinks, for God's sake, we've got to try something. Is it the same in the Medical Association, that you spearhead a small group of sincere doctors who don't represent the majority practitioners?
Well, I think that it has to be said that we're probably in the minority. There's no doubt about that. The situation is this, that there's no proven good treatment for addiction. That we are concerned about taking away rights of a small group of the society for something that is not proven and may well go into the ash can in the long run.
Oh, you sound like Dabowski or the other people or some of these kind of lawyers, don't you? You're not prepared to try anything new.
Well, I don't think it's new.
Aspects of it are new.
Aspects of it. But that, I don't think in the long run it's going to change anything.
You're not prepared to try it. You're not prepared to take it as a health entry plan instead of a criminal plan. Even with the guarantee from the provincial government, which I have here in front of me, more or less, that you will be held protected for any legal costs involved in any civil or criminal proceedings instituted against him. The government is offering the full protection to any physician who acts in good faith in terms of legislation. Don't you accept that?
I accept that. What I'm saying is that what we've held out in the committee all along is we can't decide civil rights. We can't decide constitutionality. But as physicians, we should be dealing with diagnosis and treatment problems. But we should not be in a judicial position, and we still feel, as our group, that the evaluation panel is still in a judicial position of judging whether somebody should go into treatment.
Doctor, I just was out at the Forensic Psychiatric Institute last week, where the most dangerous, potentially, emotionally, mentally ill people are held. Who makes the judgment on them to take away their liberty?
Oh, but then that's a question of a medical diagnosis and a judgment resulting from that. You can't...
What's the difference?
There's a lot of difference in terms of heroin addiction. You're talking about what is the danger of heroin addiction. You realize that if you take heroin addiction or narcotic addiction broadly, the danger from the addiction itself is minimal, that most of the danger and problems result from the laws we produce.
No, I would not take it that way, Doctor, unless you're advocating free heroin, legalizing heroin.
That has a lot of problems.
Okay, of course it does. What I will concede to you is that the dangers of heroin addiction don't follow naturally upon good quality heroin, cleanly injected with a decent lifestyle. They follow because of the criminal life affected by the heroin user.
Correct?
I'm correct in that,
yeah.
Am I not? And I have seen so many human tragedies. I've got one in the studio here this morning where compulsion is the only way that you can even start to treat them.
Well, you might hope to treat them, but we don't believe in our committee generally that it's going to solve it.
Doctor, if you've got a 15-year-old chippy on Granville Street who's using a needle,
right,
who can't be, and they cannot be handled under the juvenile delinquency laws at the moment, and whose father and mother come to you and say, for God's sake, get this girl off the streets. She's only chipping at the moment. Get her in a secure place where she can have some guidance, counseling, food and protection. Would that not be a good thing to do for that 15-year-old misguided delinquent youngster?
That may very well be the best thing
Can be done under the scheme.
But you're talking about one instance.
No, I'm talking about hundreds of instances of that in Vancouver.
No, you're talking about one kind of episode.
Right, I am. I'm not talking about all the old-time addicts I know who eventually go down the road and flake out at 50 with abscesses all over their legs. You know,
most of them don't flake out at 50 with abscesses all over.
They fall away from the drug.
They fall away from the drug.
Sure they do.
It's well proven, and there's good medical evidence that the average addict will stop using about the age of 35.
Beyond that, I would say.
No, well, the average, if you take 50% mark.
When he finally gets harried and harassed so much by the police and his money is down and he's got no more credit, he tends to fall away.
Also the question that his energy is running down.
But it's, yes, exactly, because of the abuse of his system. Yeah. Neither of us is advocating the use of drugs.
Our committee would agree that preferably nobody should be using drugs.
Yeah.
Unless it's a definite medical indication.
Have you not created, though, a phony fear of this law, when in fact it could be very useful for the right kind of addict? I'm not talking about the criminal addict, who's steeped in the damn. Is this not good legislation for a certain type of addict, properly chosen?
I must say that there's a possibility in there for some of the addicts. But this is the problem. You have a sort of a blocked system.
But you're going to have doctors doing the evaluation panel, right? Aren't you?
You're going to According to the legislation, you'll have doctors during the evaluation panel. They are on the reassessment panel only for deciding whether somebody needs to go in for further treatment for a prolonged period. You do not have doctors introduced into the system deciding where the person's going to go and what's going to happen to them in the system, as it is in the present legislation.
Doctor, you're confusing me. I don't want you to confuse me.
Why? The truth may
Not
confuse
a
you.
truth. You're telling me that, and you know perfectly well this has been watered down so much that it's practically damn all in the way of compulsion, right?
It is reduced, I agree.
Watered down because of the screams, the unnecessary screams, in my view. But it is doctors who will say, evaluation panel, we'll look at you, we examine you, you're a heroin addict, you're fit for treatment. Unfit, you're suitable for treatment.
Right.
And it's doctors who do that.
This is what the legislation says.
Do you think that we will not get 3 doctors supporting the scheme to sit on these panels?
This is one of the problems that the commission is looking at, and there may not be enough doctors.
I don't accept that.
Well,
I can't say that. I can say, I hope you're wrong.
Okay, that I'll accept.
Dr. Ken Varnam and Webster. More on drugs. Do I get it, Dr. Varnam, that at least you're pleased by the fact that you have been given this guarantee of protection when you act in good faith against similar?
Oh, yes. I feel that at this point, doctors in general are protected about some of the concerns we had in terms of if we went ahead under the legislation before it was decided as far as the constitutionality, which has been challenged. I'm satisfied now that we've been protected and we can go ahead and act within the program if a doctor so feels that he wants to do.
In other words, some of you, were you one of those who considered to refuse to participate in the program altogether?
Oh, yes.
Will you participate in it now?
For my own personal reasons, not necessarily medical, personal reasons, I'd say no.
Oh, come on now. You've got long treatment. You have a distinguished record of working with drug addicts for how many years?
24.
24 years. How many addicts have you treated?
I've seen over the years over 500 addicts.
Well, maybe you won't do it on a personal basis because you know it's hopeless.
Well, I will work on my own basis because I still treat them within my office.
Successfully or just marginally?
I've had some success. It depends on what you call success. If I can move somebody away from a criminal life into even welfare on a maintenance system, I think that's some success. If I can get them into a job situation where they're maintained on methadone, I consider that another step. And then the final step is to get them away from drugs altogether, but not going from drugs to alcohol or some other drugs.
Surely that's the object of the whole treatment plan, to get them away from drugs altogether.
No argument with that part.
Surely, I don't like the Brannon Lake site, but surely a place like Brannon Lake, properly staffed, said Webster was a Snickers, clean of drugs, for the right type of younger addict who can be decently motivated, might well be a ripe success.
This is good if you can attain that. But we know, and the jail authorities state, that it is impossible to keep a prison free of drugs. What are they going to do in Brannon Lake?
That'll be difficult, but I hope you weren't going to quote any other British Columbia experiments that were failures to knock down Brannon Lake.
No. We could talk about Matsky, but we'll leave that alone.
Matsky is a disaster. I say that, but BC Penn a disaster. Ocala, largely. There was one good scheme at Ocala a number of years ago. The drug hut, which wasn't too bad.
It had some
minor success. Yeah. But what disturbs me about the position of your stature, Dr. Varnam, is that you're not willing to try it. That's really what frightens me. And your influence will weigh heavily on the medical profession.
I'm concerned about taking, and this is a personal position. Now, must emphasize this. This is a personal position. I'm concerned about taking rights away from any small group of society for the so-called sake of doing something for them when we don't know for sure that we're going to do anything for them, particularly when, if you're talking about health measures, we're talking about something that is less damaging to them than is smoking cigarettes or drinking excessive alcohol.
Oh, come off it, Doc. Heroin less damaging than smoking cigarettes and drinking alcohol in this society. How many bodies have you seen wrapped up in plastic dumped out of apartment windows here? How many people are buried between here and Sunset Beach on the drug killings which go on as a matter of routine here?
But we're talking about the heroin traffic effect, not the heroin per se as a medical effect.
How many people have been chased through Stanley Park and shot down and had their heads beaten in with rocks because of the heroin trade in this town.
You're still talking about the heroin trade.
You're right.
I'm talking about a medical problem of heroin for the addict themselves.
You say give them heroin and keep them under proper control, stick it in their arms, and they can't be useful.
They may well be useful. I have methadone addicts. People have been transferred to methadone, which is essentially the same sort of thing,
Oh, I know.
who are functioning
Yeah,
in society.
functioning. And let it spread more, and we'll be functioning like airline pilots on methadone. Or bus
Well, that I
drivers on
wouldn't agree.
methadone. No, of course you wouldn't. But or school teachers, many of them in pot, just some of them now, and maybe we'll get them on methadone. You know?
I'm not advocating that, Jack. You know that.
No, I know you're not, but I'm trying to make your position indefensible one that society must attack on this one. And what civil liberties are you taking away from? I'll tell you what we'll do. I'm going to bring in the father of this 22-year-old boy and just see what would happen to civil liberties. I shall be back with Dr. Ken Varnam of the Drug Dependency Committee of the BC Medical Association and the father of an addict after this break. Where is Mark Lemuel? Where is he? Good morning, Mark. Nice to see you. Looking for some coffee. Did you here all morning? Did you get the opening of the program as well? Yes. About 8 minutes for the second interview. One question. One question from me to the doc, and then I'll bring you in. I'm still suffering from a Presbyterian background, of course.
It's always difficult. I've had to struggle with some of my own religious background in terms of looking at the whole problem.
I couldn't live without a guilt problem. One political question. I noticed in the brief put out by the minister, the apprehension has been expressed that physicians may in some manner be coerced or required. That suggestion is completely without foundation to serve in committee. Was it you that made that suggestion?
Now, as a matter of fact, it was one of our staff at the BCMA that raised this as a possibility, and we wanted to explore that and eliminate it as a possibility.
Now being eliminated.
Yes.
Doctors must volunteer to work in this because of their own feelings.
That's right.
BC Medical can't lean on them to do it.
No, they can't lean on them to do it, neither can the government, is what was
No,
stated.
no, I can't lean on any doctor to give any treatment he doesn't want to give any.
Well, it's, some of us will want to treat outside the system, some will want to treat within the system, and will be willing to.
I want to come to that in a minute. Can you treat outside the system?
Up to the present time, we can. And so far, this has not been eliminated.
Are you afraid that the doctor like yourself, that your ops may be gored if you are forbidden to treat outside the system?
I can always treat other people. I'm not concerned about that
And
from a legal point of view.
But you, as a private physician, can issue methadone to an addict.
That's right.
Aren't the Mounties watching over your back all the time the moment you get into that heroin business?
I don't think this has happened
For years.
for a long time. I've been doing this for 24 years. I've been under a very rigid system for over 6 years now.
Well, I didn't mean anything personal.
No, I'm just saying.
You know what I mean? That
This is
doctors think, God, if I like too many things, the Mounties will be looking in the book.
Well, I don't have to worry about that. I report almost monthly to the drug control in Ottawa.
Doctor, I want you to meet my friend whose first name only I shall use, Dan.
Dan,
Dan,
right.
how many times has your boy overdosed from heroin and what? Yes, largely heroin. In what period?
4 times in 1 week.
What kind of help have you had anywhere?
DGH pumped him out, bring him home. I went to the Alcohol and Drug Commission, and they've got him on a program, but it's inadequate because we're already having problems in 2 days, which I know myself. I've seen it.
Where is how old is your son?
22.
Where is he now?
Probably home sleeping with his drugs and waiting for his appointment at the unit. For
With
more
the drugs obtained from the Alcohol and Drug Commission.
This is what I'm pointing out is I think without the proper supervision or adequate facilities, we're into the same problems we were Monday when we took him out of jail.
You had him put in jail last weekend on a traffic bench warrant so that he wouldn't OD again over the weekend.
Exactly. We had no control of it.
When he went for his semi-conscious, comatose states, which you thought were overdoses, and probably were, what treatment did he get at the general?
General, they pumped his stomach. They gave him some medication, and I carried him out to the car and carried him home. This was a continuation for 4 times.
How long has he been using drugs?
For 2 years for sure.
He'll use anything, won't he?
Well, he gets it from doctors too. I've seen prescriptions given 3 times 1 week.
No, but these are prescriptions which are given within
They're
under the Alcohol
synthetic.
and Drug Commission?
No, these are
What
synthetic
kind of?
prescriptions. Demerol, Paradigm. They buy Coflax. They know what they get. Let's face it.
Just a minute. I just want to get this quite clear. My understanding of this man's position is that the boy has been on drugs for 2-3 years. That he has overdosed a number of times. So you have gone to the Alcohol and Drug Commission, you've gone to 307 West Broadway, and you've had no effect at all.
No.
He's now on some kind of a program, he's still at home.
Right.
Do you want him confined?
Well, I would gladly accept it.
What do you make of this problem?
Well, I'd like to sort of insert some comments here.
Yeah, I'd like to.
This is a real problem. Up until 1967, roughly, years to either side, we were having, in the heroin situation, we had a problem where the person used the majority of them used only heroin. Since 67, 68, we have gotten into what we call the polydrug culture, where the drug users use not only heroin, but anything they can get their hands on. They have also expanded beyond that to the point of using going to doctors, and the favorite question with doctors is to get somebody who is naive about medication, particularly narcotics, and say, well, I have used, for instance, Laratine, Demerol, da-da-da-da, and I've had it for this, that, and the other thing, and they get pinned, the doctor gets pinned down and write a prescription without sufficient care. I can't say that this happens with many of my colleagues, but it does happen. And as you mentioned, there are a number of cough medicines, Tussionex, Novahistex, VH, and a number of others that I've known people to be addicted to. And as a matter of fact, the registrar of the college put out a note in BCMA, I think it was July or August, pointing out that this was not good medical practice to prescribe these drugs without due care. As a matter of fact, I should go back. It was a year ago last July.
Yeah, I can understand that. But back to the position. Take Dan's boy as a reasonably classic example. He's not quite classic in that he didn't come up the usual route. He met a guy with lots of money who gave him the drugs, right? Unfortunately. Now, what about Dan right now? Supposing he's not getting treatment from the Alcohol and Drug Commission. We'll presume that for the moment. What can he do?
It is extremely difficult, even right now, for anybody to control this sort of situation. You find among the polydrug users, including the addicts, that they go around and they will see 7, 8, 10 doctors in a week. And they will give them different names, and they will get a number of kinds of drugs. And we're hoping to sort of control this.
No, I'm not talking about that. Supposing Dan came to Dr. X, who might happen to be you, and said,
what can I do about my son?
What can you do? What can you do for him about his son? Without compulsion. Nothing. Not a damn thing.
The unfortunate part, I have to admit, this aspect is that if he came to me in that situation, I'd say there is nothing, because what we have learned about drug abusers is that we can help them when they want to be helped. It's the same as an alcoholic.
I'll agree with that, but at the same time, is it not at least some panacea for the family in an overdose situation? An admitted heroin or polydrug user goes to the Alcohol and Drug Commission and he says, my son has nearly killed himself 4 times in a week. And they say, okay, we'll put him in Brannon Lake for a couple of weeks or 3 months or even the maximum of 6 months and see what we can do with him. And perhaps when he comes down off his high, the guy might see the light of day and cooperate. Is that not a...
The way you phrased it, I would agree, and especially he might see the light of day.
I'm well aware of the problems with drug addicts and with alcoholics too, whether on the bench or on the street. And I can't resist getting that
I
in.
know, I could see that coming.
You can see that coming. But to Dan, you say, Dan, I don't want your son to be compelled to do anything. Is that what you say to Dan?
No, that's not saying the same thing. If you want to take him in, and there is a provision for this, and you can go through some mechanism where the family is getting involved, I'd say fine.
You've contradicted yourself.
No, I haven't contradicted.
That's the point I made at the beginning. I have a 17-year-old daughter. I want to be able to go to the police and say, she's using heroin, she's prostituting herself. I request that she be picked up.
I think that something should be done about this, but something could be done about it without necessarily the kind of act we have.
No.
Yes.
We had to get the health entry plan with the cooperation of the federal government within provincial legislation because the federal government is too gutless to do anything.
They have other plans. They've had them in the California. I came across one that have been dealing with this, what they call CEDU down there.
Well, we've had all kinds of crazy schemes up here too.
Well, this is not a crazy scheme. This is a good, substantial place where they get people well away from any possible life contact with the city situation.
Well, all that he can do now, I suppose, is, well, why don't you throw the boy out the house? If he's going to be a drug user anyway, he's just going to infest the rest of your family, and maybe you should chop him off and say, I don't want to see you again.
Why? Why? Because the government's done nothing. There's no facilities. If I ask this doctor a personal thing, if I was to bring my boy to your office today and said, here's the problem, and professionally, you're a professional doctor, what are you going to do for me? Which facilities are you going to send me to? If he wants help.
Here in Canada, and here in BC specifically, there are no facilities at the present time.
So why were you people blocking this and put it behind for months where a week ago I could have my boy into a facility and give it a try?
That's not true.
It's true.
No, because the facility won't be available until the 1st of January on a compulsory basis.
If it comes in, there's still loopholes. The doctors, like you say, some of them have to agree to go on this panel. Aren't they going to be sort of a cop-out out of your profession by taking this position and you're going to say, oh, Dr. So-and-so's on this panel? Why? Why don't we get a selective, top caliber doctor on this board? And why don't they volunteer if they're willing to help these people?
Oh, they will. Hopefully they will. But you make a very good point. If Dan comes with his boy to you today, you'll say, well, I'll take his case history. I might be able to prescribe some tranquilizers or something for him to enable him to sleep the night and not kill himself.
I probably wouldn't get into that situation because if I took his history on this basis, knowing what the situation has been, I will say, sorry, there are no facilities at the present time.
Well, but if there were facilities, Dr. Varnam, you would not say, I'm going to send you to the evaluation panel to see if you can be sent compulsorily to Bannon Lake. You wouldn't do it.
In a case like this, I would advise them that they could go that route.
Or you would give them the choice.
Yeah.
But you don't want to take the responsibility for that.
I don't want to be on the evaluation panel.
Now, you are admitting, though, that there are many cases of which we have one in the studio, his son, who can only be dealt with in a closed setting, at least in the initial stages.
I wouldn't argue with this at any time. I just don't like the way the legislation has gone. I think it could have been done other ways better.
I think this has been watered down to the point of being ruined, but surely to goodness that the civil liberties of societies, of the society and parents are just as important as the imagined civil liberties of some desperate young addict who's going to destroy
agree the parents
himself.
Have liberties and rights too.
Well, I'm sorry that you, an experienced doctor in this field, are not giving the heroin treatment compulsory plan full backing. I really am sad about it.
That's right. But, you know, I suppose this is a good point to bring in something else, Jack.
I'll take a break first,
okay.
Then we'll bring it in. After this. And to Dr. Ken Varnam of the Drug Dependency Committee. Yes, Doctor.
This might be interesting point of view. This is a letter that we received at the BCMA, and I'm not going to say the people who sent it in, but it'll give you another viewpoint.
Right.
This is dated November the 16th. If there is a compulsory treatment for heroin addicts, why stop there? Why not go all the way to alcoholics, smokers, and venereal disease spreaders? The four should serve a jail term because they commit an offense. Yes, by all means, a compulsory system for all four.
That is specious, misleading, and a cheap shot. Venereal disease has got compulsory control right now, but you people in the medical profession haven't got guts enough to use it. Your doctors in the civil service do not use it. In fact, you have stopped checking the contacts for syphilis and bad gonorrhea.
That's not true.
You ask how many staff are on it now. It cannot be done by the present staff. Right?
It's done some degree.
And I don't hear doctors complaining about it. Alcoholism, of course, becomes an offense when the person breaks the law because of alcoholism. But that's been established in society for 2,000 odd years. Are you suggesting, though, that heroin addiction or other drug addiction is endemic in our society now and must be accepted as we accept alcohol?
Well, how many addicts do we have?
Who knows? I made the first estimate in 1949 of how many addicts were in this province, myself and Rex Cray, Vancouver City Police. And I would say that I wouldn't take the high figures of 15,000. I would certainly take the figure of between 5,000 and 7,000 polydrug, dangerous drug, heroin addiction users in British Columbia. And I've seen so many personal tragedies, as you have. And what about this boy?
Yeah, you know, there's a proven core of about 6,800. This amounts to 1 in 340 people in the population.
This is good?
No, I don't think it's good. It's gone up from 1 in 1,000 about 1955.
I have a feeling you're willing to make a decision to legalize heroin.
There's only one obstacle to this. It'd have to be over the whole continent.
Therefore, it can't be done, ipso facto.
Well, it's very difficult.
Nothing I can do for your boy.
No, the help that I've got so far is inadequate. I'm still reaching out, and I may be on this doctor's doorstep one day soon.
Thank you very much, Dan. Best of luck. Dr. Varnam, thank you very much for a very frank talk. I hope that you are outweighted, outmaneuvered, outvoted by your colleagues in the BC Medical Association.
That's fine.
Thank you. Take a break. Next week.
No, this map that he's brought.
I brought a map of Southeast Asia.
When were you last in the House of Commons?
On last Friday.
We're not starting on this. I'm going to give you a short and something else.
Okay.
And then we'll go to that.
All right.
I'm the only person. You didn't hear me this morning on Farris, did you? I've been after that bastard.
No. I didn't. It's pretty sad. It's pretty sad.
I've gone
they,
so far as to go on the air and say it's an open secret that there are many other drunken judges in Vancouver.
Mitch.
Where is everybody?
Michelle, talk to me. What are we?
Fraser Valley West. When I want it. A guest this morning. Can I call a politician a guest, Bob?
I suppose that you can. I've been a guest many times with you, Jack, and it's good to be back with
Bob,
you again in this medium.
Bob Wenman of Fraser Valley West, Conservative MP, and I'm going to ask you one question.
Surely.
Once I get the bit between my teeth, I'm kind of difficult to stop. Why have you, or any of your colleagues, not asked some pertinent questions on the floor of the House of Commons about the mystery resignation of Chief Justice John Farris? Why have the MPs, like the legal professions, got their lips tightly sealed shut?
Well, my lips are not sealed shut in any way, shape, or form, Jack. I do not approve of this judicial report. I do not accept its recommendations as in any way reflecting...
I'm talking about Benrot. I'm talking about Chief Justice Farris.
In either case, you're talking about a question of morality, and you're talking about a question that I'm sure that the vast majority of the people that I represent find this unacceptable. And it's unfortunate, in my opinion, when you get these cliques of professionals banding together for self-protection. And if we're going to have this, of course a colleague protects a colleague, but that doesn't make it right, and that doesn't mean it either represents the will or the value structure of the people of Canada, and I find it totally unacceptable, and I'm very hopeful that the provincial government will, and the federal government will both carry the matter further to some kind of a judgment, an outside judgment, as far as the morality of judges who are.
Obviously,
I'm very much in sympathy with the people at all levels that must appear before judges who are not have questionable personal problems that need to be solved before they make judgment on others.
That's fair enough. I know that you're in favor of motherhood and you're against evil, and you've expressed a sound view that the ordinary people can't understand what's going on. But there are a great number of questions directly related to the Farris affair on which questions could and should be asked on the floor of the House of Commons now, and not one of you has thought to ask Leggett, the NDP lawyer. No questions from him. Frank Oberle, he's not a lawyer, is he?
No, the Justice Committee is not one of the areas that I'm active in the House of Commons.
Well, when
I'm
you go
involved
back,
in external affairs and other areas,
fair
but
enough.
I certainly will I certainly will bring the
When you
matter, personally a request from you that we must get on to this issue because the people of Canada are
Chief Justice
concerned.
Farris going to get a pension? Is he going to resign? Is he going to be fired? Is there going to be a public report, a proper public report, a proper investigation? And are the public's great doubts going to be satisfied? Not one MP.
Yes, I think that I would have to check this, but I believe that these questions, a series of questions like this, have been asked by a Conservative member, Raina Tishin, in the House of Commons. And I'll get my research assistant to check that out thoroughly for you. And if that is so, I will forward the questions to you and the response of the government relative to this matter. But I do recall in the House of Commons last week that there was a question, and I believe it was put to Otto Lang, and a response. And I'll check that out for you and get it back to you so you can have it for your program on Monday.
Thank you. Now down to your business. You are here on a good cause, and I give you the camera there and tell the camera your cause.
Well, the cause is perhaps one that relates to all of the things that you've been discussing on your program. It relates to the question in the beginning of the older Indian who said the root of the problem is the spirituality of the person, his values. And whether it's a problem of spiritual values, it's a problem with the heroin addiction, it's a problem with the suicides in the jungle. Regardless of where you find these things, Canadians in particular used to be much more generous and outgoing. We had a broader world view. We were much more sympathetic, but I'm just amazed at how inward Canadians are looking and how the degree of bigotry that comes out and the degree of lack of concern of when we find man being inhuman to mankind. And we used to respond to this in a big way with waves of immigration into Canada and so forth. But in the world today, there has been a closing of doors of every country of the world, and Canada now has responded as well, and we have now reduced the number of immigrants coming into Canada to 100,000. Firstly, I can understand that, and I can appreciate that. In fact, I support that reduction to 100,000, and perhaps it should be reduced even further at this time. But within the 100,000 immigrants coming in, there is a special category called refugees, people who are fleeing for their very lives, not just from personal persecution, but for their lives. And these refugees are found in many parts of the world.
Okay, let's get down to cases. Are you talking about the 600 refugees?
I'm talking firstly perhaps about the 600 refugees, but everyone seems to have the attitude that once we look after 600 refugees coming into Canada, we have in fact solved the problems of refugees, we have salved our consciences and so forth. That's just a small amount, 600 of 6,000. So we can talk about the 600 that are going to arrive, and we can talk about the 6,000 or the however many there should be of that 100,000
To be quite
refugees.
specific, are you involved in the reception of the 600 Vietnamese refugees who fled from Vietnam, I presume?
This particular group came from Vietnam. We would have to talk in terms of Southeast Asia. I want to bring the whole problem to the people because one of the things about Canadians are that we don't, this land is so far away. And, well, let's look at this land now. This land that is so far away here is the area of Indochina, the area between India, the largest population of the world, China, another large population, the oldest cultures in the world, and these cultures, as they have moved together, largely by ocean, from India moving around and from China, they have met in the area of what we call Indochina or Southeast Asia.
I don't need the background lecture. What you're telling us that
I'm telling you that, okay, now very quickly then, we've had a series of conflicts here. We had the French colonizing in Vietnam. Then we had from that a wave of immigration into Thailand. Then the Americans came, and as a result of that war, people again moved to Thailand. Now we have a very severe communist dictatorship here in Vietnam, and since the Americans pulled out of Vietnam, that has spread over into Laos, as is shown on the map there. It has now spread into Cambodia, which is probably the most severest of the communist governments and repressive of freedom of any government we have seen. Now, just to look at the scope of the problem, there are, for example, in the area of Cambodia, just for that specific example, in Cambodia, we have approximately 6 million people, and we have the stories that there is, in fact, possibly a new Holocaust
in Cambodia, 6 million people in that population, and we understand that maybe 2 million have been destroyed. And I know that myself, when I first heard of this, I couldn't believe it. And actually the material came over my desk, and I just pushed it away and said, that is so terrible, it can't be true. But now Canada has documented some of these cases in the United Nations. And if you'd like, I can give you a quick example of some of the atrocities that are documented.
The atrocities in Cambodia are by and large accepted throughout the world. I'm going to take a break, and then you're going to tell me about what we're going to do for the 600 Vietnamese who are coming in now.
Right.
The program.
Well, it's not working terribly well on that from the point of view of, I don't think it's educating or enlightening the people, and you're getting an extreme point of view on the air that is not, surely not representative.
You know, Bob Wenman does disturb one's conscience just a little bit. After all, he's a Tory MP, and he's from Fraser Valley West, and I didn't mean that as an unkind remark, you know, but one doesn't normally think of Tory MPs as taking the humanitarian line, if you'll forgive me. And I'm reasonably impressed by the fact that you want to remind our audience that there are world problems today which make our little peccadillos a mere molehill, right?
Right, you know.
Or our problems socially a mere nothing.
Humanitarianism, like inhumanitarianism, is not a matter of left, right, or center. It's a matter of individual human beings, and certainly I would like to say that I'm not speaking specifically as a conservative. I'm speaking as a member of Parliament who's concerned about a problem, and we have the Canadian government, and I commend them for their action, have agreed to accept some, out of the 100,000, some refugees. Personally, I would accept more refugees within that limit. While I support cutting back on immigration, I would say there should be a greater proportion of refugees, because most of those people who will come next year by government decree are in fact secure in their homelands now, to some degree. And so therefore I'm concerned about the group that will come. Now the group that will come is going to come into a country that has many problems, and there may be resentment with them coming, and we want to try to make sure that they are received with the spirit of what I believe is Canada, that spirit of openness and generosity, and finding a place for people who have experienced these atrocities and this
I still
again.
want to get back.
Now, what are we going to do?
600.
Okay, first of all, on the 600. The 600.
Where are they now?
They are arriving, we expect, this weekend in Montreal.
By plane?
By plane, and then they will be carried reception center there, and then requests are being received from across Canada for people who want to sponsor or help this group. Actually, the government is sponsoring them, and it's a matter of emotional receivership, should I say, a way of helping these people integrate into our community. So we're looking for, and we are getting names of people who want to help, first of all, with the 600, and then the second group, the 6,000 that will come during the year. We need sponsors. And we have a special sponsorship program where any 5 listeners here to your program can get together, and they can agree to sponsor a refugee family. That means bringing them into the community, helping them learn how to shop, helping them find language schools, and this kind of thing.
Do they put up money, these 5 people?
The 5, in the initial group with the 600, this will not require a monetary output. The 600 themselves, the second group, if you want to be an actual sponsor, that depends on your commitment. The government will help in the resettlement, but if you wish to, for example, help them with the first month payment on their apartment, or help them get an apartment, or have them live with you and provide food for them, that's between you and the other 5 people.
Okay, let's stop just for a moment and get this quite clear, because we haven't got that much time. There are 600 arriving in Montreal when?
This Saturday.
This Saturday.
200
are going to stay in Quebec.
In Quebec. Ontario has said that they will take as many as wish to come there, and British Columbia is as yet reserving its position. but I feel confident that there will be some of that group, that remaining group, coming to British Columbia, and we are waiting for word. In fact, I phoned just before the program, hoping to find out how many, if we knew would be coming to British Columbia. We do not know that yet, probably won't know until the middle of next week, and we'll be ready to receive them. Now, I've been speaking to church groups throughout my community, to the Vancouver Council of Churches, and already just from talking, I have had volunteers for about 15 homes already.
All right, with whom do people get in touch if they want to sponsor some of the first 100 or 150
those that want
come to BC?
Right, those that want to help right away should call this telephone number, 666-2181. That's 666-2181. That's the Immigration Reception Center, and that line may be busy as a result of your program. If it is, feel free to call my office, and my secretary is prepared to receive calls, and the telephone number there is 530-1424.
Give it again.
530-1424.
666-2181, 530-1424 if you want to help with the reception of the first batch of Vietnamese refugees.
Or also, we could, of course, give you information if you wish to help with the ongoing program. And I might add, it is not just refugees from Indochina, although that is where the most severe problem probably is right now. There are refugees from Lebanon, there are refugees from Chile, there are refugees from many parts of the world of all race, creed, and color that are fleeing for their lives from persecution, and if there are Canadians that will open their hearts to them and their homes, we would like to hear about them, and I think this would be, I know that there's a great receiving also in anything that you give in this sense. I find that people I talk to that are volunteering are already receiving a great deal of joy in themselves, and that they're going to help somebody, probably the least of those in the world today, those who are refugees. And I think there's a great opportunity here, and that in turn will help the spirit of Canada.
Good enough, and there's a 6,000 immigration refugee program for next year, on which full details will be available later on.
Later on, they are available now. Groups can sponsor under the new Immigration Act, and my office will be pleased to send out information on that, sponsorship forms and so forth.
Thank you very much, Bob Wenman. I'm very much obliged. Nice to have a touch of compassion in the program for a change. I wish you well. And if you'll bear in mind to let me have the answered on any questions which have been asked and which we may have missed because of the newspaper strike or whatever. Thanks very much, Bob.
Thank you, Jack.
I'll be back after this message. How much time, Michelle? Hey? Oh, he's back now. Yeah. Oh no, he built the cat on himself on July and is happily practicing. Not that book, love. My book of documents, my big bundle, with Fraser Hyman. Thanks very much. Come on and we'll have a little chat here. Go on, sit in there. Come on, come on. Microphone, quick. I don't know. We'll just we've got 2 minutes and 45 seconds.
So we've got 2:45 altogether, eh? And you've got to take your count because we're rolling ENGs or something. I'm going to play with your...
Have they made the count right this time?
They made the count right, yeah. 30 seconds. Use is correct. 15 seconds, Jack. Single review coming on 1 first. Okay,
I'll take this. I'll take this with me this weekend. Well, Linda has joined me over at the studio desk this morning because she's got a little present to give me. What is it?
Well, that's your mail for the weekend. That's what you got to do in the weekend.
This is the mail I have to read over the weekend.
That's right.
You know, that's one
Lots
thing.
of work.
We better tell people that we're not that. Somebody answer that phone over there, please. We better tell people that we're not very good at answering letters.
We try, but we get so many.
I didn't mean it was your fault. I mean it's my fault. It takes me 3 or 4 days to get around to reading letters. And I'd like to make an appeal to people who write to me. Please do not send me compensation board documents, valuable documents, letters from the Queen, or anything else. Because while we do what we can to encourage news stories and to work on news stories, we can't possibly go back into legal disputes of 25 years ago, and that's no exaggeration, is it?
Not at all. Not at all.
Or compensation cases that go back how long?
Oh, at least 15 years, some of them.
15
Started
years,
15 years ago.
What about Monday?
Well, Monday we have Dr. Pat McGeer. I presume there'll be a continuation of the judge's affair, comment or something. We are going to redust Pierre Burton. I don't know if I should say that.
We're in trouble on that, you know.
I know.
The word has gone back to Toronto that I've been talking about putting Pierre back on the shelf. So I solemnly promise and declare, as I shall answer on the last day of judgment, that Pierre Burton's brilliant interview, and it is a great interview, Pierre, not me, will be used to close the show. It's 20 minutes, Monday morning, November the what? November the what?
29th. 27th, sorry, 27th.
27th of November.
Yes.
Pierre is being dusted off today and will appear on television sparkling and shining. One other thing.
The Best of Webster, Saturday on the NewsHour at 6:30.
Oh, it's Saturday this week instead of Sunday.
That's right.
Approximately 6:30 p.m. we try and wrap together the best of dear old Webby's stare. You settling down?
Trying to, yes, I think
Not
so.
that easy, all these strange people around here, isn't
They're
it?
nice people.
Oh, yeah, I suppose they're nice enough once you get to know them. I'm not quite so sure. How much time, Fred? 15 seconds.
You're not going to sing. No, I'm not going to sing.
You're not going to sing.
No.
Promise, word of honor.
Promise.
Webster, Monday morning, BCTV, 9 a.m. precisely.
I would, Mr. Webster.
Yes, sir.
I would like to thank you for doing the kind of reporting that you do, because it has opened my eyes about this case. I had read about this case in the papers for a while, and it just doesn't stick in the memory long enough to realize how important it really is.
Well, thank you, sir. I respect your view. I think you're wrong.
Man, oh man, the way you're spewing it out this morning, I don't know how we're going to cope with you, Webster.
We wonder why, don't we? Don't we? What are you?
Hello?
We wonder why, don't we?
Well, I haven't agreed to that. Here you go again putting words in my mouth.
You did.
It may well be that sometimes the government... I didn't say that the NDP government was right in doing that. I told you that we condemn the government for doing that.
The double standard becomes evident, sir, and thank you very much.
Just don't get the thing buggered up that way with how old they are. You know better than that. And
I thought somebody was going to attack either one of us with a hammer.
Well,
I think that's a reasonable proposition. I think that is.
Oh, Lord God, Jack.